I don't know the last time I actually talked with a microphone, but for those that don't know who I am, I'm Ryan Funk. I'm the sheriff of Mineral County, and this is the second debate I've been requested to man. So I'll let the candidates introduce themselves, and then I'll go through a short little intro to what the rules are going to be tonight.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Stanek. I am a teacher in St. Regis, Montana. Been teaching social studies out there I'm coming up on my 7th year. But 8 months ago, I was just a concerned citizen and a voter. And now that I have 2 little boys and I am seeing what's going on in our state and in our country, the idea actually had been presented in my mind probably 2 years ago, but it didn't get real until 8 months ago. And I felt that sense of it's a call of duty to want to serve and try to change things for the better. I'm concerned with things like fraud, waste, and abuse with our tax dollars. I'm concerned with what's going on with our children. There's an attack on the family. There's attacks on their identities. All of these things are motivation for me of why I wanted to get involved and try. I don't want to look back in future years and think I could have tried to do something and I didn't. Ultimately, outside of teaching, quick little background, I was born on the Air Force Academy. After my dad separated, we moved to Southern Oregon. I went through public school there. When I graduated, I ended up enlisting as well. So I served as a cop in the Air Force. When I got out and I deployed, I went to Afghanistan, spent some time in Kyrgyzstan. But when I got out, I took a position in management at Sportsman's Warehouse. And then from there, I had this realization that I wanted to teach. And so I kind of did the non-traditional thing. I graduated from University of Montana Western in Dillon. And that was 2018. And so I took my first teaching job in St. Regis, and my boys have been born in Missoula, and we're building a cabin right now, setting roots. So nice to meet you guys.
Thanks everyone for coming tonight. I'm Steve Delisle. I live here in Alberton, local dentist in Superior and Frenchtown and Lolo. Me and my wife built a house in Alberton about 2016, and at the time I was working in Nevada as a dentist, and we were commuting back and forth. And COVID hit in 2020, and they shut down my business, forced me to wear a mask, and tried to get me to take vaccines that I did not want. And so at that point, we pulled out of Nevada and moved up here full time. And the reason why I'm running for the state legislature here in Montana is I don't want Montana to become the state that I fled from. Both me and Jeff have lived in other places, and I've seen what other states have done. I lived in Washington State. I've studied in California, and most recently Nevada. And the leftist policies that have taken over those states, I don't want to happen to Montana. And so I'm running for the state legislature to be proactive, to pass legislation that protects our constitutional rights and make sure that Montana remains the refuge that I came to from Nevada. Thanks.
All right, well, once again, thank you guys all for coming here. I know it takes a lot of time out of, family life and everything else, but it's good to see people that are coming and wanting to be a part of this and listen to these guys and make informed decisions. So thank you. As I did in St. Regis, all these questions tonight have been brought to me by citizens of Mineral County. Some of these are going to be reruns, but it looks like we got all new faces. So we're going to try to keep this to approximately 60 minutes. Nobody's brought sleeping bags. I don't think anybody's planning on spending the whole night here. So we're going to try to keep it fairly close to that. Candidates will be randomly selected for their order. There's only 2 here tonight, so that should be pretty easy to keep track of. Each debate question will be started by me, and the candidates will answer opposite of each other, and then they'll have time to debate it back to the original answer. I gave 3 minutes because there's so few to respond to each question. I will keep track of the elapsed time tonight, so I'm going to be the jack of all trades, master of none tonight. At the end, we'll do what they call a little lightning round. I have a little pamphlet. If you guys have questions you want me to ask, just make sure the questions are not singling out one candidate. It's for both candidates, and I'll go through those, and we'll get to those at the end. They'll have 2 minutes to answer those. Has anybody got any questions before we move forward? All right, Steve Delisle kind of answered this in your intro. Why are you running for this position?
Yeah, so I'll just elaborate a little bit more about my experience. Again, me and my wife built a house in 2016, and each year, we bought some property down at Sear, and we were working on it. Each year, we were moving up here more and more, investing more into Montana. And then when COVID hit, it changed everything. It changed, obviously, the whole world. We saw certain governments become coercive and oppressive, in my opinion, and Montana was that safe refuge. When they shut down my business in Nevada at the time, they told us to stay in our house. You couldn't go anywhere. So we just pulled up and we drove up here, and we spent the whole summer up here, and it was fantastic. And Montana was that refuge. Mineral County was free. You weren't forced to wear masks. You didn't have to get vaccines. And so it was just amazing. And the reason why I'm running for the state legislature, again, is to be proactive and pass proactive legislation to prevent Montana from sliding into the type of states that I fled. So, for example, when it comes to issues like our southern border, this is going to affect us in the future, and we need to be proactive about this. All the legal immigration coming into the country will make its way, will have an impact here. So in Nevada, they had a law that was passed, was called the Motor Voter Bill, and it was passed by Republicans and Democrats, and it allowed illegal immigrants the opportunity to get driver's licenses, okay? And then anytime someone went to the DMV and got a driver's license, they automatically got registered to vote. And so when COVID hit, they mailed out all those ballots. And I personally witnessed and I personally saw illegal immigrants getting ballots in the mail. And so that type of legislation, I want to make sure that we prevent from happening to Montana. Voter integrity is a big issue, and this is just an example. We could pass a law preventing illegal immigrants from getting driver's licenses. And so that's why I'm running for the state legislature, to make sure that we maintain our constitutional rights. Education, and so that's what's important to me. Thank you.
Jeff Stanek, why are you running for this position?
As I said when I was giving my introduction, I have skin in the game now with my 2 little boys. I would even say that before they were born, I had skin in the game because of all the kids that come through my classrooms. I teach social studies, and I give those kids a call to citizenship every single day. And I wonder what Montana is going to look like and our nation is going to look like for them when they are 18, 20, 30, and they want to start a family. What's going to be left of our state and our nation unless good people stand up and get involved and do something? Some things that I'm very, very concerned with is, and I mentioned it already, would be fraud, waste, and abuse of our taxpayer money. It's beyond anything that we can actually comprehend, you guys. And I've seen it at the local level in my own school district, all the way up when I was serving in the military. So it's federal level, state level, local. And it's really, really easy to spend other people's money. And it's really, really easy when there's no accountability. And so I want to fight that. Now, to be fair, we both are going to tell you we got some really great ideas, but there are 150 other people in the state legislature that have a say in this thing. So 150, that's 100 representatives, 50 senators, and 1 governor. So one of us and then 150 others have a choice. So we could have really great ideas and want to actually change something, but it has to be a movement among us, the people, because it's a government for the people, by the people. It's not the other way around. The government doesn't control us. We're supposed to control the government. So along with fraud, waste, and abuse, I'm also recognizing, and I recognized it a long time ago, but now it's very, very apparent. There are people that say they're conservative in political positions, and then they vote the exact opposite. And they're deceiving us. There's a lot of deception going on, and I can't stand that. I don't like truth. I don't like them not telling the truth. Sorry, I got distracted looking at. I love truth, by the way. Another thing would be property taxes. It's absurd what has happened with our property taxes. We had a $2.5 billion surplus last year, and yet the governor's office still sued all of those counties. I think it was over 49 counties maybe. 38 I know in in legal battles, but nonetheless, they're not listening. They're not listening to us, the taxpayer. And I'm okay with being the voice. I got some fight still left in me. So these are some of the reasons I want to run. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we'll just throw Jeff right back on the hot seat. We have all heard a considerable amount of dialogue about the Constitution during this campaign. But what are you planning on bringing to the citizens of Mineral County?
First and foremost would be actually protecting our children. There's this argument that goes on where, Fourth Amendment right to privacy, or privacy in say, a female's reproductive health. That protects them in killing their children. It's an unpopular thing. We know that there's euphemisms that are used, like the fetus, but it's a child. It's an unborn child, and I can't stand that. We have to fight for them because, in my mind, vulnerable populations, so it would be children, elderly, people that are disabled, we have a responsibility to care for them and protect them. So with that, the right to life is really, really important. And the argument that always comes up is, I don't think they're alive. And so I'd ask, well, when are they alive? And we go back and forth because they have to take an arbitrary stance. And so for me, life begins at conception, and I would definitely support any legislation that would protect children like that, because they have a right to life, and that's in our Constitution. That's in the Declaration of Independence. It's also in the Montana Constitution. How am I doing on time? Okay. Some other constitutional issues that I would want to bring to the table would be, there was a famous Supreme Court case, Wickard versus Filborn, and it's kind of a strange one, but this guy, he's a farmer, he wants to grow more wheat than the government was telling him he was allowed to during the FDR administration, and he grew an extra 10 acres of wheat, and the federal government sued him. This is during the Great Depression years, and the Supreme Court at the time changed the interpretation of interstate commerce. They said that, no, interstate commerce, now we can tell you what you do in your own state. And I'm going to connect this back to the big thing that I would like to push for, which would be firearm rights. Specifically, I think that we as citizens that are law-abiding, we should be able to own a suppressor. I should be able to buy a suppressor just like I buy a firearm at the store in Missoula or wherever. And I should be able to go through that the same way. The federal government says, no, National Firearms Act says you can't do that, and we get to regulate what goes on inside the state. Well, if it doesn't leave the state, it's not violating interstate commerce. Now, to be fair, I already have gone through the process. I hunt with a suppressor, so. But I think there's little tiny things that happen where they take away little bits of the freedoms and rights that are protected by our Constitution. We got to say no. So definitely a Second Amendment issue. How far that would go, I don't know. There's 150 other people. So thank you.
These guys must have an amazing internal clock. They've taken it to like 10 seconds every time. Steve Delisle, we have heard a considerable amount of dialogue about the Constitution during this campaign, but what are you planning on bringing to the citizens of Mineral County?
So both the federal and state constitution was written to constrain and limit government, not the citizens. And so that's very important to remember that constitutions are meant to constrain the government because the natural tendencies of government are to grow and grow and grow and grow, take over more and more of our lives and micromanage us and take away our freedoms. So some of these issues that Jeff was talking about are important. They're federal issues though. What I'm focused on is state issues. What can I do at the state level, the state legislature, to impact our lives? Two things I would do. Number one, I would pass a bill. I would support a bill that would constrain CPS from using gender ideology and using pronoun use in determining whether a child needs to be removed from their parents. It's happened already here in the state of Montana to a couple in Glasgow, Montana, where CPS took a child out of the home, partly because the parents did not agree with the social transitioning of the child. So the 14th Amendment gives parents rights through the Due Process Clause. Several Supreme Court cases have laid that out. And when the state government can come between a child and their parent, the state is too powerful. Now, I believe CPS has a role in preventing abuse and all things like that. But I would pass a bill, again, constraining the government, which is CPS. They shouldn't be able to use gender ideology in determining when to take a child out, number one. Number two, I would support or pass or propose some kind of parental rights bill. Again, we have rights under the 14th Amendment as parents, and I would propose a bill that would support maximum transparency in public schools. If your child is being taught something that violates your values, it should be absolutely transparent. You should know, and you should also have the ability to opt out your child of things like CRT, gender ideology, all that stuff. If it's happening, you need to know about it and be able to opt your child out. So those are two concrete things that we can do on the state level to pass legislation to further protect parents' rights and protect children in the house.
Thank you. Now, Jeff, if you have any rebuttal, you get 2 minutes.
Okay. First, I want to just make a correction. Abortion is a state's right. That's not a federal issue. 10th Amendment says anything not in the Constitution is given to the states to decide. The overturning of Roe v. Wade has given the state of Montana back the power to make a decision like that. So it's just a correction. I also think it's important that we address, we have courts that want to legislate from their positions, and it's not their job. So the example that gets brought up, the 14th Amendment, the original intent of the 14th Amendment, so the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment came Civil War years, okay? They freed the slaves, and then you had southern states that were trying to, they'd say, okay, you can be free, but we're not going to give you the same rights or protections. That's what the 14th Amendment was written. Anybody who wants to fact check me can check that. But it's been used and twisted in ways to try to justify things. They use the 14th Amendment argument for the original Roe v. Wade stuff. So I have a hard time with that kind of thing. But to touch on the school board stuff, the school choice, the freedom in schools to know what your kids are being taught, those are school board issues. We in Montana do not have an organization that brings down or tells us what we have to teach. School boards get to decide that. That's a fact. I'm telling you from experience teaching in public school. Our school board is the one that decides what our curriculum is in St. Regis District. Same thing for Superior, same thing for anywhere else. So which is really important for us as community members to get involved in our school district, to know what's going on, to be involved in our school board, run for school board, that kind of thing. So right now as it stands, we don't have that issue. I want to remind everyone, we both have really great ideas, but they're just ideas. We would still have to convince 150 others. Thank you.
Thank you. Now back to Steve. What are your thoughts on affordable housing for teachers and law enforcement, and how can you accomplish bringing something like this to Mineral County?
So I'm a big proponent of the free market. I don't typically like subsidies, and I don't like the idea of government subsidizing housing. I've seen that in several other states, and it doesn't go well. There's always the unintended consequences of a government action. So when the government has a great idea, we're going to spend a bunch of money in this area. Again, there's always the unintended consequences. So I'd like to see some kind of free market solutions. Certainly, Mineral County has a tremendous amount of potential, and I have ideas when it comes to tourism to bring more revenue to the county. Tourism tends to be seasonal, so I'd like to see companies relocate to Mineral County, do manufacturing to replace some of the mills that have closed. So what can I do as a state legislator? I don't know off the top of my head what companies or what I could do to bring in business, but I don't like the idea of your tax dollars going to subsidize big companies. It starts small and then it usually grows. Again, I came from Las Vegas. Clark County, Nevada took millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to build a Raiders stadium. Okay, that kind of stuff where it starts small. Let's just take a little bit of your tax money and give it to companies and free enterprise, and it ends up subsidizing companies. I'd like to see us do it on our own, and see the free market at play to solve some of these issues.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, what are your thoughts on affordable housing for teachers and law enforcement, and how can you accomplish bringing something like this to Mineral County?
I'm going to agree with Mr. Delisle on the issue of government. Government does a terrible job. They need to stay out of the market. That's why it's called a free market. Part of the issues that we're facing right now with housing in general in our areas, there's no industry anymore. So government has choked out all of the industry that we had in these areas. All of the mills that are up around us have been closed. The mining stuff, unless you want to drive all the way into Idaho, there's just no opportunities left. So you either work for the state, you work for the school, or tourism. And I don't like the idea of having that entire area based off of tourism. We need industry, and I would agree with Steve on that issue. There's also something that's looming and we need to address, and that is the fact the reason things are so expensive and the reason we're facing these issues of housing shortages and whatnot is because both state and federal, especially federal government, has got their hands all over this thing. So the reason things are so expensive is because the Federal Reserve, the private banking entity that runs our money at the federal level, and obviously it trickles to the state, they increased their balances on their books by like $6 trillion in 2 years. This is where the inflation comes from. This is why things are so expensive. And that I don't know what we do as a state to solve that, because in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, it says Congress has the power to coin money. States don't have the ability to do it. But at some point, we as states are going to have to demand that the federal government is accountable. And I'm a proponent of an idea of a convention of states to require term limits or to have a balanced budget so we don't fall into this trap of everything's so expensive and inflation is skyrocketing. There's another side of this too, and that is government right now is actively involved in making it even harder for people to move to St. Regis or to move to Mineral County because of the floodplain stuff. If you guys are aware of this, they're redistricting the flood maps, and which means that anybody that wants to either build or expand their business that is in and around the Clark Fork in certain areas, depending on the elevation, they're going to be faced with paying astronomical prices for flood insurance. These are just small little things that the government continues to do, and we as a state have to stand up against them. How probable is that? I don't know, unless we get enough people on board and there's a big enough movement to say no. Just no, we're not going to do that. We want to have industry back. We want to open up logging again. We want to open up our minds. We want to be respectful of the environment and do things ethically. So thank you.
Steve, any rebuttal?
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate for a state legislator to, what they can do to maintain the free market, but also do something, is most of the land in Mineral County is public land. If you're a true believer in the free market, you want to see supply and demand dictate housing prices. If we had more more supply, then house prices would go down. And so the federal government and the state can work with the federal government. The federal government and state government can open up lands for more housing developments. There's only certain places you can build here in Mineral County. And so that's where I would target. I would say let the free market work, the genius that it does, and the government, both federal and state government, open up more lands for more building. And then that supply and demand would help bring down prices of homes.
Okay, thank you. And part of this, guys, is I can bring up stuff and have a little brief discussion also, is on Monday I met with a group, I believe, if anybody's watching this and I get this wrong, I believe they were from the Netherlands, and they were here with a guy named George Bailey, who is very active in the St. Regis community and Mineral County. And they also brought a builder from Missoula, and they talked to me about wages, how much we got paid as far as the deputies, myself as the sheriff, detention and dispatch, and how much the housing is here and how comparable it is to Missoula. And they talked about, they have a company who makes these kit houses. They're literally walls, you put them together. They have all the insulation, all the plumbing, all the electrical. And they charge about $700 a month, I believe, in the Netherlands. And they're thinking about bringing something like that to St. Regis because the mill's closed. Maybe, the St. Regis mill is a location for something like this to come. What do you guys think about that? And I'll start with Stanek first.
I heard a blip about this maybe a day ago or 2 days ago, and I actually heard it connected with some of the other things that are going on in and around our area. One specifically is there's a lot of big federal grant money that's floating around right now for this the Green New Deal, which is a federal government program. And there's some people that in our communities that we would know. I think you guys will need to look into it because I haven't vetted it personally. I've just read some of the articles. But some people are going to benefit highly from these federal grants to generate these new green energy technologies. One is hydrogen project, pulling water out of either the aquifers up there or the river, and then using the hydrogen that they pull off of that and then putting it back into the river, the water, and then generating power for a huge area. But we're talking about massive amounts of money, you guys, for this. And I heard that the housing, that kit housing that you were talking about, was connected to people that would be brought in, these union workers that we brought in to live in these places. So it wouldn't be for us community members that are looking for affordable housing. And just like if any of you guys are familiar with the oil boom in the Dakotas, specifically North Dakota, we don't want these temporary houses. We don't want something that's like a kit home that, when the industry dies, we'll just pack them up and leave. We need some industry that's actually going to stay here and last. I want my kids to be able to, if they want to stay in Mineral County or if they want to stay in Montana, they have jobs and industry that they can actually build a life and raise a family and own a home. I agree with Steve on the supply and demand issue, but it's way more complicated because the way the federal government is screwing with our money system. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. 2 minutes also.
Yeah, I also don't want to see temporary housing come to Mineral County. I don't think it's good. It doesn't allow people to plant roots. It doesn't foster a sense of community if someone is just living in temporary housing. What I want to see is what's right up the street. Right up the street is Thompson Ranch, I believe. It's a beautiful subdivision. And, it allows someone to buy a house, plant roots, raise their kids, have a yard. That's what we want more and more in Mineral County. Now these homes, I think they start around $400,000 or $500,000. If we had 10 of these, supply and demand would dictate that those home prices would come down because there'd be more inventory, less demand. And so that's what I would like to see. I want to see more of Thompson Ranch all over Mineral County. And I don't think just having something like I don't know if you've heard of Boxable again. It's like temporary housing. You set it up. It gets set up in like 1 hour, but that's not a long-term home. And we want long-term residents who have roots in the community and not staying in temporary housing. So I don't think that's a long-term solution to our problem.
Thank you. I believe I'm back to Jeff. Can you be objective and logical in decision making, even if it means letting go your own goals or beliefs?
I said this at the first debate in St. Regis. Objectivity doesn't exist. You guys, I have biases, and I'm open with you about my biases. I care about the unborn. I care about our freedoms and our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. I won't compromise on things like having kids coming that want to be, adults that want to be the opposite gender going into our locker rooms. I won't, or bathrooms. I won't compromise on these kinds of things. So I objectivity doesn't exist. I have biases, but it's really, really important to tell the truth. And I'm telling you the truth on what I stand for and where I'm at. So as far as being logical and reasonable, though, absolutely, I'll be able to do that. One of the things that I put on my little pamphlet is that I'm a voice of reason, because sometimes it's important for us to just talk and listen to the other side, even if I don't agree with them, because we're all people and we deserve dignity and respect, even if I may think that they have crazy ideas. Nonetheless, there's a tendency nowadays for people to get really emotional in decision making, and the life experiences that I've had, you guys, put me in a unique position to have a little bit tougher skin. I won't take anything personal, and I think that's a very beneficial trait. There's way more going on behind the scenes in our world, and I'm aware of it, and you should be aware of it too. And so with that, if we disagree on issues, or if I'm in the state legislature and there's arguments being had or whatever, okay, fine. It's important that I keep a level head, and I think that our leaders should have that trait and that character. So thank you.
Thank you. Steve, can you be objective and logical in decision making, even if it means letting go your own goals and or beliefs?
Yeah. So what's important to me is just being honest and transparent on the campaign trail, so that all of Mineral County, all of House District 90 knows what they're getting in me as a candidate. So if I do get elected and I go to Helena, there are things that I'm not going to compromise on. That's going to be your freedom of speech, your free exercise of religion, your right to keep and bear arms, private property rights, and parental rights. And no one should be surprised when I stand firm on those issues, because that's what I've been talking about for the last 6 years. And so I'm not going to compromise on those types of things. On the other hand, when it comes to something like Medicaid expansion, and I'm a dentist who takes Medicaid, many of my patients are on Medicaid, that's where, I have flexibility. Let's do a deal. What I want to see is Medicaid was meant for those that are poor and those that are disabled. And I want to make sure that those are the most vulnerable in our society have Medicaid as a safety net. So how do we ensure that those who are on Medicaid are taken care of, while also ensuring that those that are able-bodied men like myself aren't taking up those funds and are out working and improving their lives and aren't staying on Medicaid their whole life? Okay, so when it comes to something like Medicaid expansion, I can do a deal. I can be flexible with the Democrats, and we can hammer out a deal. But when it comes to those things, the fundamental rights, I'm not going to compromise on those things, and everyone should know, should be aware that that's where I stand. Thanks.
Thank you. Jeff, you got 2 minutes to rebut.
So Steve, what I'm about to say, you need to know, this isn't, I want to give you a chance to clear the air because I know that there still is concerns. I'm not on the social media stuff, but it's like I can't get away from it. People are telling me like, "Oh my gosh, did you see what it said here?" Like, no, yeah, I'm not really. I'm a conscientious objector when it comes to that kind of thing. But I want to give you a chance to clear the air. You brought up honesty and truth and that being important, and I told you that a long time ago. The first time we talked, I said if you really care about this stuff and you're genuine, it would be a win for District 90, whether they get you or me. But so you ran in 2020 in Vegas, and then you ran in 2022 in Vegas, and then you filed to run here in 2023 to run. I'm gonna yield my time to you so you can clear the air. You tell them what you want, just because I think it's important, especially if people are watching. Because it's like the last debate. It's like, oh, gotcha moment. So I'll give you a chance. You can clear the air. So yeah.
So, for some people, this is a big issue. Where is he from? He's not from here. Can we trust him? All I ask is that you look at my record. I've been consistent for the last 6 years. I've ran in several races. Again, COVID upended everything, and so we decided to move up here full time. And the reason why I'm running is not, frankly, because I want to be a politician, because life in the private sector is fabulous. This is a sacrifice to me because I don't want to see Montana become like the place I came from. Specifically, the last 2 races, they were close races. I'm a conservative. Again, I've been talking about the same issues for the last 6 years. Nothing's different. And I want the same things for Montanans that I was talking about in Nevada. So what was I talking about in Nevada? I was talking about freedom of speech, free exercise of religion, parental rights, right to keep and bear arms. These are the fundamental rights that keep us free as Americans. And without these rights, the government will steamroll us. And so now that we live up here full time, I've started 3 businesses. I've invested heavily into Mineral County. I have 2 offices, or I have 1 office in Superior, 1 in Frenchtown. I'm the only dentist in Mineral County, quite frankly. And so we're heavily invested, and I want for all of Montanans what we've come here for. And so does that answer your question?
Oh, I was just giving you a chance to clear the air.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And one of the big things is we all do, if we have social media, we see social media, sorry. And, it's disturbing on how far it's got politically in Mineral County. And, I mean, these guys show you that, they're true statesmen. It's not, dig on one and dig on the other. I mean, they're in it for the same reason. And, I mean, I think they show it here tonight. And so, putting Facebook aside, I think a lot of us should put Facebook aside, is it's gotten dirty, and, it's really not worth our time. We have families. I have a little boy. I know, Jeff has a couple little boys, and we need to, get back to family and get back to our roots and get back to who we are. So I appreciate that. I don't know who I left off with. So we'll go with Steve. Okay. Jeff already hit on this, and then we'll go to our power round of 2 minutes. But with abortion being a top issue, what is your stance on this matter?
So I'm pro-life. I've always thought, well, let me back up. I was a dentist. I've been a dentist for the last 15 years. About 5 years ago, went back to law school, studied constitutional law. I'm not a practicing attorney, but I certainly understand constitutional law. And Roe v. Wade was one of the worst decisions ever in this country. The Dobbs decision overturned it and gave it back to the states. So here in Montana, the legislature has tried to pass pro-life legislation, and the liberal Supreme Court has shot it down. As a state legislator, I will continue to work on passing pro-life legislation and reducing the number of abortions. That's my goal. Life for me begins at conception, and anything that I can do to reduce the number of abortions, I will do as a state legislator. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, do you want me to repeat it? Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to kind of piggyback off of this. So 600,000 plus abortions every single year in our country. That's CDC data. More than likely, it's closer to 1 million abortions every year because of the abortion pill. And the vast majority of abortions are in that first trimester. That is an atrocity. That's genocide on the unborn. And we cannot stand for it. We can't use euphemisms and call them fetuses. We can't do this thing where we dehumanize them or we say, oh, you're violating the mother's rights. I can't. I won't stand for it. So I'm in the same position Steve is with definitely voting for legislation that would protect the unborn. With that, average cost, last time I checked, $20,000 to $40,000 to adopt a kid in the United States. It's harder to adopt a child than it is to kill one, and I can't stand it. It's disgusting to me. And the arguments, I've already presented them. They'll say, well, you'll be violating the mother's right to reproductive health care. It's not, because just like Dr. Steve said, I'm in this position. Life begins at conception, and if life begins at conception and they're in the United States, guess what? That's when the government grants them their rights, even though natural rights, every human being has them. But that's when we would be actually protected, and the government should protect and uphold the same natural rights for that child. As he already said, we have a Supreme Court that's legislating from their positions, and that's not their job. And something that I would definitely stand for would be the check and balance in our government on the judicial branch, which is impeachment, articles of impeachment. If you are violating your constitutional oath, I would absolutely present that. And it's a slippery slope, I've heard, because people would say, yeah, well, if you do that, if you get conservative justices on the court, then, and there's ever a flop in the legislature, the liberals they'll want to impeach. And I heard somebody that was pretty wise say, okay, it's part of the checks and balances if they're actually violating their oath, right? So, yeah, there's my stance. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Steve, you got any rebuttal or any more?
Yeah, just to follow up, there is an initiative right now. People are collecting signatures. You may have seen him in Missoula. I actually saw him in Superior. And there's an initiative on the ballot, or they're collecting signatures to try to get it on the ballot to enshrine abortion, and even more than that, with language about gender reassignment surgeries and things like that, that would make it a constitutional right. So what the Supreme Court is doing is legislating from the bench, because nowhere in the Montana state constitution does it talk about abortion. It talks about the right to privacy, which is a throwback to Roe v. Wade, which has already been discredited, overturned by Dobbs. So this right to privacy, you have an abortion because you have a right to privacy, is nonsense. I wouldn't agree with it, but I would respect the citizens if they passed a constitutional amendment protecting abortion. Again, I don't agree with it. Life begins at conception. But what the Supreme Court is doing is legislating from the bench, and they're using this discarded old reasoning of right to privacy to protect abortion. And so, again, if I get elected, I will always be voting to protect the unborn. Thank you.
Okay, like I said, we're going to go to the lightning round, but I think it's important, especially for the viewers because we're live on YouTube, I'm going to give these guys 3 minutes for a little bit of a closing before we take questions from the audience. So I'll start with Steve first for a 3-minute closing.
Yeah, thank you everyone for showing up in person, and those who are watching on YouTube. I've been through a lot of my life. I have a lot of concrete experiences that have shaped and informed my experience. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a dentist. I went to law school. There's a lot of things that I've done that have gotten me to this point that will help me in the state legislature, help me represent you in the state legislature. 3 concrete areas or bills that I would propose would be number one, property tax relief and also property tax rebates. And if we get those property tax rebates, they should be made automatic. You shouldn't have to jump through some kind of bureaucracy to get that rebate. It's your money. If the state's going to give property tax relief, it should just come, number one. Number two, if you're a senior, I would eliminate the taxation on Social Security benefits. Only some states, I think 12 in all of the United States, tax your Social Security benefits. The state of Montana does that. You were already taxed on that money when you were working. You couldn't invest in the stock market, that money. It was confiscated from you. You shouldn't be taxed twice, and the state of Montana does that. And lastly, I touched on this earlier, what I would do is propose a bill that would be strengthen parental rights, like a parental bill of rights I would propose, and also a bill that would restrict and constrain the government, which in this case is CPS. CPS should be doing investigations into child abuse, sexual abuse, things like that. They shouldn't be interfering in how a parent raises their child. And so those are the three areas that I'm passionate about. Those are the three areas that I will propose bills. And so I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stanek, 3 minutes.
There's been a lot of talk about social issues. I would call them constitutional issues as well, but with abortion or the trans stuff. But there's something that's bigger that should unite all of us, because whether or not on the left or the right, we all are human beings. We all are taxpayers. Well, most of us are taxpayers. And we have a lot more in common than we do different. But we focus on these few issues that are incredibly divisive, and the media uses it. They pull us apart. They divide us. And this is a strategy that goes back probably to the 14 or 1500s, maybe even before, but it got popularized by Niccolo Machiavelli in The Prince. And he talked about the idea of making people argue and fight amongst themselves, and that way the true power, the ruling power, is not ever challenged. And I think that's what we're up against right now. So one thing that should unite all of us is the fraud, waste, and abuse with our tax dollars, where that money is going, the people that are getting rich, the bigs getting bigger. And I'm not talking about anybody that's successful. I'm talking about the people that have actually participated in a massive corruption and have gotten government to essentially subsidize their businesses. These would be big defense contractors. These would be the banks. But as far as anybody in our areas, in our state, in our nation that wants to actually seek out the American dream, they should have that opportunity. And government should get the heck out of the way and stop with the corruption, the waste, the fraud. With that, I'm going to go to property taxes. This is where Steve and I will not really see eye to eye. I signed the constitutional initiative a couple years ago to put a cap on property tax. We got enough signatures. It should have been on the ballot, and it should have passed. But the Supreme Court killed it, and they said the wording was incorrect. I encourage you guys to look this up, which is crazy because we wouldn't be in the position we are today with the madness with our property taxes. I don't want to rely on the government to give us a rebate or to, you can apply for this. It's your money. It's our money. And they work for us. And so if we demand that they change something or that they don't take that same amount of money from us, they have to listen. It's a government for the people and by the people. Finally, there's been obviously some back and forth about what our backgrounds are. You guys, we both obviously have some great life experience to bring that would help shape not shape, but help influence the legislature in this next session. Can I finish?
Go ahead.
But regardless, as far as being a true conservative, I will tell you guys, I'm ready to say no. I'm ready to say no for more spending and government expansion. And if we really want to change, we need to actually do it from the ballot, and you need to tell your neighbors and tell your friends to do it. I hope you guys vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve Delisle and Jeff Stanek. We're going to take a little 5-minute break, and I'll get some notepad paper out to the people who want to ask questions from the audience. So we'll be back. TV commercial. All right. We're back, and these guys will get 2 minutes apiece, and we'll hit Jeff first. What are your viewpoints on unionization?
People should have the right to join a union if they want to, and people should have the right to say, no, I'm not joining a union if they want to, and the government should stay the heck out of it. That's pretty simple in my mind. I'm called a free rider at the public schools because I'm not part of the union, and that should be my right to do it. I think there's been some push to require that, especially for government contract jobs and stuff. Like there should be some requirement that only a company that is has a union should be able to get a contract. I think it's ridiculous. It's not freedom at all. So that's, if you want to join one, join one. If you don't want to join one, don't. It's a free country, I thought, right?
Thank you. Steve Delisle, same.
Yeah, I feel the same way. My slogan for my campaign is "Vote for Freedom." That applies to many, many areas. Unions have a purpose. I support unions. I support those who join unions because it helps offset the balance of power between corporations and the working class. So I have no problem with unions, but I don't think you shouldn't be forced to join a union. And so the idea of right to work, being a right to work state where you're not forced to join a union, is very important to me. It actually goes back to the First Amendment, freedom of association. And so if you want to associate, join a union, and it benefits you, you should be able to do that, but you shouldn't be penalized or coerced to join a union if it doesn't suit you.
Thank you. Jeff Stanek, what is your position on a Montana state sales tax?
The only way, and I said this the first time anybody ever asked me about that, the only way that I would ever remotely entertain that idea is if you could guarantee me that property taxes go away and income tax goes away. If you could guarantee that, and there need to be a cap on the sales tax. But that's not going to happen. That's unrealistic, you guys. And the way governments operate throughout history is they take, and then they need more, and the next year they take, and they need more, and the next year they take, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So the example would be, if property taxes worked 2 years ago, why did they get raised? What is going on? Or any tax in general. If the budget worked 2 years ago, why is it now? And I know the arguments is like, well, inflation, or you have a influx of population. It's not. We have a $2.5 billion surplus, as I already said, you guys. And they gave us peanuts back. You guys, some of you got your checks in the mail. That wasn't all the money. And of course, the state legislature, and you can look this up, when they saw the surplus, they immediately get to work because how can we spend that money? It's not their money to spend. It's our money. So I would say no go on the sales tax.
Thank you. Steve Delisle.
Yeah, the answer is no to a sales tax. I did have a proposal out there that some people, I think, misconstrued on Facebook, but there's 2 taxes already on the books, and I would be a proponent of increasing those. Number 1 is the car rental fee. Number 2, the car rental tax. The other one would be the lodging tax. Why? That's because that affects tourism. That affects mostly people from out of state. So I continually give the example, if a family of 4 is flying up from California to see Glacier National Park, and they're spending $10,000 to spend a week up here, another $100 on the car rental fee isn't going to discourage them. And so I'm looking at it from growing the pie, growing the tax revenue base from people that are out of state. I'd much rather tax someone from California, and I live there, or Washington, than tax you or me here in Montana. So it's not the silver bullet. It's not going to fix everything, but it is a solution to help grow the tax base, because what's happening with property tax, and I'll make this very quick, is that if we shift, there's 16 different types of property tax. If our property tax is too high and we shift it to the utilities pay more tax, great. We get a little bit of relief, but not really, because utilities are going to pass that back on us. If residential rates go down, but business, commercial property goes up, they're going to pass that on to the business owner. They're going to increase the rates. It comes back on us. The only way to actually reduce the burden and increase revenues is to look outside the state for increased taxation, and we can do that through tourism.
Thank you.
You get a rebuttal?
I'll give you a minute rebuttal.
I'll do 30 seconds and I'll let him come back because he might have something back to say. So, no new taxes. I don't want any new taxes. In my mind, a true conservative would say, no, property taxes are too high. Our taxes are too high in general. Government's already too bloated. No. Until you can prove you can be a good steward with our money, no. So I would say I would vote to not raise taxes. I have friends, we stay in Airbnbs in the state. We've rented vehicles in the state. I don't want to pay additional costs on that kind of stuff. I don't want any new taxes. And I get it. It's like, oh, the out-of-staters can pay it. I don't agree with it in principle because the government already takes too much from us as it is. I'll give them time.
I got no problem with taxing people from California. What I would say was, if that tax affects you, if you go to Bozeman, you spend $30 in additional lodging taxes if you go there for a week, but we could reduce your property taxes by $1,000. I'm sure you would take that offset. And so, if certainly if you're renting a rental car or you're going across the state, you're going to pay a little bit more in taxes. But if you could significantly reduce your property taxes because we're collecting hundreds of millions of dollars from people from out of state, again, I'll stand on that one, and I got no problem with that.
Just because I think this is kind of a hot topic and they just want to keep firing, I'll give Jeff a little bit of rebuttal for that also.
I get rebuttal?
Tear it up.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm going to guess that some of us in this room didn't live in Montana to start with. I bet some of us came here. So if I'm already getting taxed crazy in another state and I want to maybe go out and look at Montana to try to find an escape from the madness, the last free portion of America, and then I find out, oh, they're going to tax me to go and be here, that's sad to me. That is against the principles of being a conservative in general. I said it earlier, you guys, there was already a constitutional initiative to put a cap on property taxes. California has a cap on their property taxes. Why don't we? And this is turning into the playground for the rich and famous in Montana. So everything is becoming more expensive. And you may not believe this, but I think that there really is an agenda behind the scenes to make it in a state to where it is for the elites, maybe by the elites, and we don't really care about, you folk that are making your $40,000 a year and trying to survive and raise a family here. And I don't like it. So I'd say no new taxes, no raising taxes. I don't want to tax somebody from California. I got friends in California. I don't want to tax them. I don't want to tax you guys. I don't want to tax anybody more than what we need. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a rebuttal. Who makes $40,000? Giving you a bad time. All right, Steve.
So think of it this way: we have timber, we have mining. Those industries have gone away. Tourism is our industry. There's only one Glacier National Park. They are going to come. Yes, tax them. Otherwise, you will be taxed. And so I got no problem taxing those from out of state because they are coming to our state to enjoy our natural resources. We have Glacier, we have Yellowstone, we have Mineral County, amazing and beautiful. Heart Lake, Clark Fork. They drive on our roads. It comes down to this: we're going to raise revenues. We're going to tax somebody. I'd much rather tax those that are coming here, enjoying a vacation. It's all built into the package, than have our property taxes go up. Thank you.
Just don't pet our buffalo.
Keep it going. Keep it going.
Can
I ask a question?
We'll end with not petting the buffalo. Steve, what is your position on this administration's 30 by 30 land initiative, and what will you do for Montanans regarding this issue?
I'm not familiar with that. I got to be honest. I'm not sure what that is about. Is this federal or state?
Do you want me to give you the microphone? No?
Yeah, so I'm against that. I don't know all of the details, but mhm. Mhm. Yeah, let the private industry do that. I have a ranch with bison on it. You can come to my ranch and look at them. The government already has too much power. And what Jeff said before, he referenced the interstate commerce clause. It has grown and grown and grown and grown to overtake all of our lives. And so that's just an example, the interstate commerce clause. If the government is proposing taking private property and a land grab, that they're just gaining more and more power, then I oppose that. I don't see any benefit in that because I'm a constitutional conservative. I'm a small government guy. Remember, the government or the Constitution constrains government, and the federal government was supposed to be limited. And so, from what I can tell, based on the information you provided, it's not something I would support.
Jeff? Thank you. Jeff?
If we look at the Constitution, it doesn't say anything about nature preserves or anything like that. And so, but it does say, 10th Amendment says anything that's not in the Constitution, the states get to decide. So guess what? Montana should be able to decide. The federal government should stay the heck out. I already have a problem with their mismanagement of all of our resources. I mean, Mineral County is 80% federal land. And every so often we deal with some crazy forest fires because they won't let us log and they won't let us manage the land correctly. Then you have push for things like the wolves. Oh, let's introduce the wolves back. That's a brilliant idea. And then we'll protect them for a long time. And now we're facing what we're up against, which is dwindling deer and elk populations. And I'm going to tell you right now, I heard this the other day. If we're talking about something that could directly affect us from mismanagement, both the federal government wanting to take control more of our lands or mismanage more of our stuff or whatever it is. There is an issue where, when wolves in Russia, I think in Siberia, when wolves destroy populations of the game that they normally eat, you know what they start doing, you guys? They potentially will eat human beings. Now, you guys can fact check me on this, So, and hopefully Fish and Game does a decent enough job, but their track record kind of sucks, and so I don't really trust them to be good stewards with what we have, which is why both of us, I think, see eye to eye on. I would say absolutely not. If the state of Montana thinks they want to make a preserve or something, let the people vote on it, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, and I think that's, one thing that these guys could fact check for you too, if you want them to do some investigating and see what it's all about and then get back to you and let you know.
I would absolutely be for that. Right now, there's some things on the books like Good Neighbor Program or easement opportunities for easements on whether it be close to state land or things like that where we can actually partner already. But I don't even like that because it still limits Montana from being able to utilize the resources correctly. And yeah, exactly. And the way it works too, you guys, is so many people have their hands, so many agencies have their hands in. If we want to even just open up a timber sale, I've got a buddy who's pretty high up as a forester, forest administrator, does this, oversees these jobs. I mean, there's jobs that they tried. It's in litigation. It's been litigation for like 14 years. They can't log a particular spot. That's crazy. We shouldn't allow that. We shouldn't allow it at all. because ultimately it hurts us. It hurts us with industry. It hurts us with the terrible fire seasons. It hurts us with providing all the things that we've talked about before, the affordable housing, having an opportunity for our kids and our posterity, and we really need to be probably concerned with that. I'll give it to Steve now.
Yeah, I think, the question, how much government do you want in your life, is an appropriate question. There's enough government in our lives. I think the proper level of government starts with the states, because if you remember, the states created the federal government. And so anything we can get back from the federal government and local, or manage locally and on the state level, I would support.
Thank you. And I'll end with the question near and dear to my heart. Law enforcement wages. Do you have any ideas on how to increase them or fund the police?
Yeah, I'll take this. A budget is always a list of priorities. We all have budgets. We have household budgets. And when you go through your budget, the most important thing gets funded first. And so I support increasing teachers' wages and law enforcement. And at the same time, not increasing taxes, except for the car rental tax for out-of-staters. Not increasing taxes because it's about a budget is a list of priorities. And if I get elected, I'm going to have to go to Helena and convince the other 150 that we should be budgeting differently. There is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse, pet projects. And so if we're serious about keeping safe communities and funding law enforcement, and I do, that's just got to be one of the first things that gets funded.
Thank you, Jeff.
It is about priorities, and it's very simple solution, okay, you guys? So 95 mils is what we're collecting across the state, county by county, to fund public schools. I'm going to tell you guys, there's tons and tons of wasted money in that. I promise you. I could cite examples, and if you'd like to know, you can talk to me after. Nonetheless, all you got to do is allocate a small portion of that for law enforcement, which is absolutely a priority. It's in our preamble, our Constitution. That's what one of the purposes of government is to provide for defense. So, and I don't know, I mean, if you're like me and you're in a rural community, it would be nice to know that if something big goes down, like maybe behind your house 50 yards, there's a bunch of shooting going on, and I'm freaking gearing up and getting my stuff together, getting ready to go see what's going on. I'm hoping that law enforcement has both the training and the resources, the manpower to be able to respond to such a thing. So that's a really simple thing. You just allocate the money that's already there, that's already being wasted. It's simple. I'm going to address the teaching thing. This is a very unpopular stance to some people in the education community, but throwing more money at it is not going to solve the problem. It's not going to solve the problem, you guys. There's way more going on. And I know there's an argument to be made that if education and the teaching profession was more prestigious, maybe we'd have better options. Yeah, I don't know. I just know that if we look at the last 20 years, you know what we've done? We just lower the standards and we throw more money at it. And it goes in the same direction it's headed. So I don't like that. I think that law enforcement should be a priority. I might even say law enforcement should be up there as far as priority-wise with public education. Like that should be something that's talked about in our Montana Constitution. I'd be open for that. We should provide for that. Same thing with rural fire departments. Like West End Fire Department's volunteer. They're the people that are going to come rescue you if you're getting in a terrible accident up there on the pass. They're doing a volunteer, and they're struggling with money. They're struggling to find people that actually volunteer. So we got to make these things a priority. Thanks.
Steve, you got any for a return?
No, I would just say me and Jeff are probably very similar candidates, and I think you guys would be represented well by either of us in the state legislature. Thank you.
All right, with that, that's all, folks. Thanks for showing up tonight. Thanks for getting some of your questions answered, and thanks for putting up with me. I'm no Bob Barker, but thank you.